If you haven't used the program before and you're going to need to do a layout of a story or a small book, it's probably easiest to show you how to use InDesign from the perspective of doing a simple kids book. With that in mind, I chose to do a short Christmas story to show you how to set up your pages, do page numbering, add the text, and the illustrations. My example isn't complete. It's something that I've been working on off and on for a couple of years. I haven't gotten it done, but I have enough pieces and parts to show you how to go about doing something, and given that the amount of text is so small, I can more readily show you how to thread the type. So then, let's first take a look at some kids' book examples so that I can point out some of the whats and whys of how I do things.
Okay, the thing I wanted to talk to you about um, before we get into the InDesign document itself was this example is going to be about, laying out something for a children's book. So here I have some examples of some children's books. It's a Dr. Seuss one to begin with, primarily used for very beginning readers. The thing you'll notice is that the books are really colorful and that there is scant copy on a page, probably no more than 4 or 5 words at a time. And the thing that I principally want you to notice about this is the type is set fairly large. And that's the reason for that is because of the fact that you're trying to get used to, or trying to get children used to rather, reading. And because of that, they spare out large spaces of places in the illustrations so that the children don't have to hunt all over for the words. Here's a perennial favorite of Christmas time, and since we're talking about a Christmas story, Tasha Tudor's the illustrator. She's doing Clement C. Moore's The Night Before Christmas. Again, fairly large type, always set in a recognizable position on the page so that kids don't have to go looking around for it all the time. Some color illustrations, some black and white. Always framed and kind of created in the same way. Here's a more modern version, a book called The Pout Pout Fish, another Christmas story. This one has the distinction of having the type set in sans serif. Most often children's books and a variety of adult books are set in serif typefaces, and that's because serif type is much easier to read than sans serif type, although this is doing a pretty good job. Again, fairly large and pretty bold. So again, that's the kind of thing that we'll be striving for, or if you're doing a children's book, that would be the kind of thing that you'd want to strive for. Anyway, the example that I used was this Norwegian folktale, The Cat on the Dovrefell. And this would be like the inside flyleaf illustration. And then as the pages open, there would be an illustration on one side and the text on the other, so that you wouldn't have to go hunting all over the place for the words. The type is set fairly large, maybe larger than the examples that I had shown you in the children's books just now. But again, probably better to have an illustration on one side and the text on the other, so that, and again, the illustrations aren't complete. They still have something of a gray background to it. Might do something different if I was going to go about coloring them in. But again, this helps, and when I show you in InDesign how you go about laying this out, it becomes fairly easy to be able to get the text in and the illustrations. That's the next part of this demonstration.
Now let's open InDesign and start laying out our pages, applying numbers, and threading the text. So here I have InDesign opened up. I'm going to change my picas to inches because it's the most easy for me to understand. I'm going to do an 8.5 by 11 page. I'm going to start with a number of pages at 3, even though I'm going to expand this later on. And I'm going to do facing pages. I'm going to leave the margins set to where they are in the default, because I don't need to do anything different than that. And I'm just going to go ahead and create. When it opens, you're going to see your very first page we're in the pages section. If you can see me moving my cursor around over here, you'll notice that there are 3 pages showing. I'm going to zoom out so that we can see those 3 pages. Then I'm going to address something else. Now, these are the first 3 pages, and they're in the pages area. The confusing thing that a lot of students get hung up with is when you're working in pages and when you're working in masters. There's 2 different things here. The pages are located here. The masters are located up here. There is a none, and there currently are 2 master pages. The master pages are where you go to set up your page numbering system. So I'm going to do really quickly is I'm going to click on these first 2 right here. Now, if you'll notice, I'm still way out where I was before, so I could see all the pages, and you'll notice that I only have 2 pages showing. That's because I'm in the master's pages. So what you apply to the master pages ends up going onto all of the pages themselves. So what I want to do now is I want to establish page numbers. So to do that, I'm going to use my text tool. I'm going to go down here in the corner of the first page, and I'm going to open a text box. And in that box, I'm going to type the letter A, because this is the A Masters page. Now I want to make sure that that's fairly big so I can see it. And I'm going to make it kind of horsey. I'm going to make it like 24 point. I might make it bigger than that. So I really want to be able to see this. After all, it's a kid's book. And I'm going to use a typeface that I want. I'm going to use Georgia because that's what I'm going to set the book in. And I'm going to make it bold because I really want to see it. Okay, so there's my page number, first page number set. But now you have to do something by way of creating a special character. To do that, you need to go into Type, and down here insert special character, markers, current page number. So now what that does is it tells the A master that whenever I apply the A master to a page, that it will apply a current page number to it. We'll look at that in just a moment. Now what I want to do is I want to take this and I want to copy this and move it to the other page. Edit, and I'm going to do copy, and then I'm going to go over here to this side of the page, and I'm going to do edit and paste. And it's going to come up here, and I'm going to move it down and put it right there. Okay, so now I've got both page numbers applied to the A masters up here. Now let's go out and take a look at the pages. So I'm going to click on the first page, and you can see there's a 1 applied to it because there's an A applied to page 1. I can get rid of that if I apply the none to this first page, in which case I believe I'm going to apply the none to the first page. There we go. So I got none applied. You can see 1 disappeared. And now on my pages, it still is page 2 and page 3. If I go and add additional pages, now again, I'm in my pages, not my masters. So if I apply other pages to this, I'm going to go to this page and add new pages. And as I do that, you'll notice that it's keeping track of the number of pages for me. So I don't have to do that anymore. That's really, really, really nice to be able to have your document all numbered for you and applied to masters that are behind the scene that continue to add page numbers to this as you go along and really not have to think about this. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to begin threading our type. All right, now in order to thread the type into InDesign, you're going to need to have a Word or a WordPad or a rich text version of it. Now I have gone about taking and breaking the type up and showing where I want the illustrations to go. The ones that are shown here in black are illustrations that I already have. The red ones are ones that still need to be created for this. And as you can see, all in all, it ends up going out to about 21 pages. And that's because I'm going to be running the text fairly large font size. All right, so let's take a look at how to do that. So here I have just the text version of this. I don't need this first part. I'll add that in later. What I want is the text for all of the pages. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy all of this. And it's just a simple cut and paste. Now the version of the story is somewhat different than the audio one that I'm having you all listen to. There's a number of different versions of this story out there. It's an old Norwegian folk tale. And so here we are on our document again that we were just working on. So now in order to put the text in, the way that I've composed this, or a way that I want to compose this, is that I want the illustrations to always appear on the left-hand panel and the text to go in the right-hand panel. And I'll take a look, we'll jump ahead here in a moment and look at one that I've already got laid out. So in order to put the type in here, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to open a text field inside of the parameters of our border. Now that we have the text field in there, I'm going to want to make the text large enough that I can actually read it. I'm going to make it 36 point. I think I had 36 or 42 in my example. And then I just do a right click and do a paste. There we go. And you can see that the type has come in. Now we're going to zoom in here for a minute, go over some things. Now, obviously there was more text, especially with this font size set to 36 point. There was more type than would fit into this window. You'll notice that down here in the corner is a little box, and it has a plus sign in it, and that means there's more text than will fit inside of this field. So what I want to do is I want to shove some of this text down. I think the way that I had it set up was the first page just had, once upon a time there was a man up in Finnmark, which is the farthest most habitable point in Norway, and that was all that was on that page. So I'm going to go and take and do enter and begin shoving this text down into the next. It will go on to the next page when I do that. So I'm going to keep moving it down till it's gone. There we go. And then I'm going to go up here and I'm going to grab this type and move it down as well till it's kind of in the middle of the page, because that's the way that kids' books mostly work. So that looks fine. I want to take and make this first cap, this preceding cap, larger than the rest of the type. So I'm going to go ahead and change that from 36 to 60, because that's, one of the things that kids' books often do is they begin a story on the first page with a large letter. I think, let me take a look here. I'm going to back up for just a minute and take a look. I may want to adjust this text field, move it over just a little bit so that it's not hugging the borders so much. And then I'm going to go back in and take a look at how that looks. Now, it's done something funny. It's made this jump down, and that may be because of that preceding cap. So I'm going to do a back. There we go. And now I'm going to do, there we go. Once upon a time there was a man. Okay. Finnmark is got underlined because InDesign doesn't know that word. You can teach InDesign words, in which case it won't underline it and tell you, well, wait a minute, I don't know what that is. Also, you can adjust hyphenation too. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to grab this text field. If you go here and hold click right on it, you gotta have your there, you'll notice this little group of text moving around the screen with you. It means that, okay, I'm going to take the text from this overfill and put it onto the next line. Okay, and it has gone to the next line down, which is where I want it to be. I'm going to backspace this a bit so that it's more in the middle of the page and move this down again, so that we've got the text located on this page that we want. Now I'm going to back that up and move this down. And as you can see, you can move things around pretty readily. I'm going to zoom out, see how that looks relative to the other page. You can see that it's a little bit different, so what I want to do is I want to grab the edge of this type window and move it in so that it's more aligned with what this one looked like, kind of more towards the middle of the page as well. And again, I've got my overflow box going here. The illustrations are going to go here. The flyleaf illustration is going to go there, and we'll take a look at that here in just a moment. I'm going to move down one more page so you can see how easy it is by just clicking on this little window right here and grabbing the text and moving it to the next window, how you can thread the type, thread the copy into the next window. And you can just keep doing that until you get, all the way down through the rest of the book. And it'll tell you, how many pages that you're going to need, but you're going to have to adjust this. And of course, if you're not doing a kid's book, things are going to probably be a little bit different because you won't be running the text near as large. And we will look at this here in a little bit. I'll do another demonstration that'll show you how you can thread copy. You can do columns rather than full page spreads like this. Okay, so let's go then and take a look at the rough version that I've already laid out, and I can explain a few more things with that. Okay, so here we are in the document that I currently had laid out to show you what this might look like as you get into it a little bit further. Now here I've gone in and added the illustrations. That being the case, I think maybe I might want to mention the illustrations here first. So let's take a break and do that, and then we'll come back to this.
Now, as far as the illustrations are concerned, I've been working on these for a little while. A couple of these I did a few years ago with the intention of doing this story, but never got it much further along. And now, since we're talking about this kind of stuff in typography, I thought, well, I'd press ahead and do a few more. Anyway, this was the first one, and the second one that I did. These were just kind of like one-offs. What I do a lot of times is I blue line or use blue non-photo blue pencils to do the illustrations in first, and then go back over them with black Prismacolor because it makes it easier to block out the blue when I want to. Here's one where I've started and haven't gone in and put any of the black line stuff in. Here's one that I've started over. This one is and down came the trolls, where they're coming into the house, but this one's not complete yet. As you can see, the details on a lot of them aren't done yet. Here's the iterations of some were great and some were small, and some had tails and some had no tails at all. So anyway, that's kind of the way that I work with the illustrations. This one's the one where the little troll is going to wake up the bear with the sausage under its nose. So it gives you an idea, and then I scan them in and clean them up. Anyway, that's pretty much the way I do the illustrations, or have done the illustrations for stories and stuff. You'll see that ahead in some of the short story stuff as well. Anyway, so much for the illustrations. All right.
Okay, so now that you see how I have gone about doing the illustrations, you can see that once they're scanned and placed in, you can simply just go out there, find them, and put them in just like you were adding the type. And what you do with that, I'm going to go over here and take a look at my layers palette. And you can see that in here I have layers, various layers. I've got a layer here that's illustrations. If I turn that off, the illustrations should all disappear. I've got the text layer. If I turn that off, the text layer should disappear. Layer 3, I think, are the bulk of the illustrations, yes, for the rest of the piece. So this is the main page illustration, this is the pages illustration, and this is the text for the overall thing. And you want to break things out that way if you're doing a book like this, so that you're working in the text panel when you want to be working in text, and in illustrations when you want to add illustrations. So let's go in and take a look at this now. You'll notice, first of all, that InDesign has some question marks located here on each one of these illustrations. That's because this version of the book that I have open, the illustrations have been placed into a folder separate from the InDesign document. I'll take this and see if I can bring this to come up real quick. Move that down real quick, rid of that, and open up my Cat on the Dovrefell folder. And you can see the InDesign documents are located out here, and the finish versions of the illustrations are located there. That being the case, if I were to move these files inside of the finished illustration file, then those question marks would go away. What it's telling you right now is that InDesign does not know where those illustrations are. You always want to try to keep the version of InDesign that you're working on along with the illustrations. This is much like Illustrator in that way. Otherwise, InDesign might not know where those files are located. So anyway, here we have the first page, the once upon a time there was a man up in Finnmark, and then I've got a map here showing where Finnmark is and where Denmark is, so that in case, little readers might want to know geographically where those things are, that's where they are. The next page shows the illustration for the first page and the text that accompanies that. I think in this particular version, I'm going to go out here, and you can see that I've got most of the stuff laid out all the way down through, and I think this is measured out to 42 pages, which in translation means actually 21 facing pages, because a lot of these pages are front and back. And then what I've done right now, for the sake of the illustrations that I don't have, is that I've gone in and I've added a field here that says image 3, which means the image for this one is missing. The image for this one is missing. And you can see that in some of the illustrations that I had done, that I've got some of these done in blue line form, but I have not completed them yet, so they're not ready to be put in. So hopefully, I think mostly this explains to you how you go about laying out a story like this. It's much the same if you were to do any of the versions of stories that I've placed up for you for the sake of doing the short story. You should, again, of course, feel free to do your own version of a story if you want to. If you've got an example of a kid's book like this that you want to do, feel free to do that. The real pressing question is, can you come up with the illustrations necessary to complete it? Because part of this exercise is for you to come up with images and text for everything. Now, one of the other things that we'll get into here in a little bit is I'll show you how to wrap text around an illustration, but that's kind of outside the bounds of what I'm showing you here with this simple kids book. All right, so anyway, I hope this explains to you how to put text in, thread it into your pages, and how to add illustrations. I might not have gone all the way into adding an illustration, but it's pretty simple. All you do is, in this particular case, like image number 3, which I don't have done yet, but you would just simply go and make sure that you're on that page. This is the regular bulk of illustrations, so I'm going to close that. And what you're going to do is you're just going to take and open a field inside of that. You want to be on that layer. I had it locked, and that's why you couldn't get in there. You just want to go in and add a field in here, drag it open, and then add your illustration into that field, like so. You say, okay, for instance, I want to add a illustration in there, just like this one. So you just simply, once you've got your area opened up, you'll go to, File and then Place. Where'd it go? I lost it. This is like Illustrator. You want to do File, Place in order to locate. And then what you need to do is you go in and you find an illustration. And I'm just going to quickly add one in here, even though it's the wrong thing, and open it. And there, it'll place it into the field for you. That's not the illustration that goes there. And in that case, I'm going to delete it. But anyway, you can see how you go about adding a text window, or a window. It's not a text window, it's an image window, and then adding the image into it. So anyway, I hope this explains things. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions, and I'll go over that when we do our Zoom session. Okay, all for now, and I will see you guys in the next video.